Why did my husband answer years of jokes about his pennies and soft hands with a neat stack of legal papers in a crowded lobby instead of a fight at home? How did I go from bragging that real men fix things to watching a court officer say my full name while he calmly chose a life without me? What do you even say when the man you called useless is the one who walks away with the plan, the house, and his dignity? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Zuleika Morel-Hart, and I used to think I was doing my husband a favor just by staying married to him. That night started like many others. Eli came home from school with his tired teacher face. His shirt was a bit wrinkled, and he had ink on his fingers. He put his bag down by the door and said he was exhausted. He said the kids were wild and that he still had papers to grade. I looked at the clock and felt that familiar irritation. It was Friday night. I wanted to go out. I wanted to feel like I had a real life, not just sit in a small apartment with a man who earned pennies and brought work home. I told him my mom had invited us to dinner at that chain restaurant near her place. I said it would be fun and good for Ruby. He asked if we could go another time because he had a test to finish grading. I said my mother already booked the table and people were expecting us. I pointed at Ruby, who was drawing at the coffee table, and said she needed family around her. He did not want to be the bad guy in front of our daughter, so he said he would come. In the kitchen, I watched him open the fridge and stare at the shelves like he was thinking about money again. He always worried about money. He said maybe we should cook at home and save. I reminded him who paid for most of the extras. I told him that people who count every dollar usually do it because they do not make enough. He went quiet. He always did that when I hit the soft spot. It annoyed me and pleased me at the same time. I got dressed in my nice jeans and a fitted top. Simple, but it looked better than anything Eli owned. I put on lipstick and checked my reflection twice. I wanted to look like a woman who did not belong in a life of cheap furniture and broken cupboards. When I walked back into the living room, Eli was still in his work clothes. I looked him up and down. I said he could at least iron the shirt if he wanted people to take him seriously. He muttered that nobody cared about his shirt at a family dinner. I told him that people do care, they just do not say it to his face. Ruby ran out of her room in a little dress that my mother had bought. She spun around and asked if she looked pretty. I told her she looked like a princess. Eli smiled at her in that soft way he has, and for a moment I felt a tiny stab of guilt. Then I remembered he had no plan to give her more than this life. No house, no real savings, no "dad fixes the house" moments. Just a man with soft hands and a small paycheck. The restaurant smelled like fried food and cheap sauce when we walked in. My mother, Sabine, waved us over to the long table at the back. My brother Jonas was already there, talking loud and showing videos on his phone of some job site. He works with wires and tools all day and likes to remind everyone of that fact. Carol, my mother-in-law, sat near the end, quiet and polite as always. I kissed my mother on the cheek and took the seat beside her. Eli sat across from me, next to Carol. Ruby squeezed in between her grandmothers. Right away, my mother asked if Eli was still at that school, like it was a hobby, not a real job. Eli said yes, he liked teaching science. He started to talk about a project with his students. My mother cut him off. She asked if teachers got paid extra when the cost of everything was going up. I saw the way Eli's neck tensed. He said, in that mild voice, that they had small raises but nothing big. Jonas whistled and said he made more in overtime last month than Eli made in 2. He reached over the table and showed us a picture of his new drill. I laughed and said that at least one man at the table had a real tool. The jokes came easy after that. They always did. I had told them at work before. I told the story about the broken cabinet door in our kitchen, how Eli tried to fix it, and the hinge still hung wrong. I said it leaned like a drunk person. Jonas laughed and said he would come over with a real drill, not a toy. My mother said a man who cannot fix a cabinet better have a thick wallet. She looked at Eli when she said it. Eli gave a small smile and looked down at his menu. I could tell he wanted to disappear into the plastic page. Ruby had been listening. She said, very clearly, that Daddy was not a fixer, and that Uncle Jonas and Grandpa always fix things. Everyone laughed again. Even I laughed. Inside, a little voice said it was too much, but I pushed that feeling down. I told myself Eli had to feel some pressure or he would never change. When Eli finally spoke, his voice was low. He said the comments about his pay and skills hurt him. He said it in a simple way, not dramatic. I felt the mood at the table shift for a second. It bothered me. I did not want to be the bad guy. So I rolled my eyes and said he knew I was joking. I told him everyone at the table teased each other. I said if a few jokes about money could break him, maybe the world was too hard for him anyway. My mother nodded at that, like I was speaking wisdom. Carol cleared her throat and tried to change the subject. She asked Ruby how school was going, but the jokes were already hanging in the air. Jonas leaned closer to Eli and asked how much he made per month. He said it was just guy talk. Eli gave a number, and Jonas made a face and whistled again. He told me, loud enough for the server to hear, that I was basically doing charity work by staying married. I smiled, took a sip of my drink, and let the comment sit. It felt good to be seen as the one who settled. It made me feel powerful. Eli paid the bill in silence. I watched him open his banking app. I could not see the numbers, but I saw the tight line of his mouth. As he put his phone away, a small notification flashed across the top of the screen. I caught enough to read it. Downtown, 3:40 p.m., personal. It looked like a calendar reminder, set to repeat. He slipped the phone into his pocket before I could look longer. On the walk to the car, he asked if I really thought he was that useless. I said I was just being honest, that other men in my life knew how to fix things and make real money. I told him, respect follows results, and I needed results. He said he was trying his best. I said his best was not enough sometimes. I still believed I was right. I thought he would hear all of this and finally change. I did not understand that he was already changing, just not in the way I wanted. On Monday morning, Eli left early for school, like always. He kissed Ruby on the head and told her to have a good day. He told me the same. I gave a small while I checked my phone. I was still thinking about the dinner. I replayed Jonas's joke in my head, the one where he said I was doing charity work by staying. It made me feel both proud and bitter. Proud that people saw my value. Bitter that Eli still did not see the problem. At the call center, the office was loud with ringing phones and the soft buzz of people complaining about bills. This is my kingdom. I am team lead. I sit in the middle row with a slightly nicer chair. People come to me when they want schedule changes or want to gossip. Kelsey rolled her chair over to my desk before she even logged in. She asked how dinner went. She said she saw my family chaos selfie at the restaurant. I told her they all joked about Eli and his teacher salary. I told the story of Ruby saying he was not a fixer. Kelsey laughed and said kids always tell the truth. I said, yeah, they do. She asked what Eli said. I told her he was hurt and that he talked about feelings again. I made a face when I said feelings, and she laughed harder. It was easy to turn his soft side into a joke in that room. Later in the morning, I saw the maintenance guy in the hallway talking to the office manager. It was Mason. I already knew him from the building. He had done some work on the shelves in our break room a few months back. Tall, broad shoulders, the kind of man people notice when he walks in with a toolbox. Today, he wore a dark t-shirt with his business logo and a tool belt. He looked like the opposite of Eli, and I knew that was half the reason my eyes stayed on him. Kelsey saw where I was looking and smirked. She asked if I needed something fixed. I laughed and swatted her, but I did not deny it. When Mason came near our row to check the wiring in the ceiling, Kelsey waved him over, and told him our team lead had husband problems with repairs at home. I told her to shut up, but my voice did not sound serious. Mason asked what kind of problems. It was simple small talk on his side, but I heard it like an invitation. I said our kitchen cabinet was still hanging wrong after my husband fixed it. I explained that my brother and my mom laughed at him the other night. Mason shook his head and said some guys are just not hands-on. He told me to call him next time instead of letting Eli fight with hinges. The way he said it made me feel like there were only two types of men, ones who fix things and ones who stand there in a wrinkled shirt. The day moved on. I took calls, solved billing issues, calmed down angry people. I was good at my job. Better than Eli at his, I told myself. I made charts for my team, handled numbers, moved people around the schedule. At lunch, I showed Kelsey a meme about beta husbands and low pay. She said I should post it. I said I could not, because Eli followed me. She said I should send it in the work group chat, where he would never see. In the group chat, I wrote that I was basically a single mom financially. I added a laughing emoji to make it look like a joke. I wrote that my husband's dream was posters and science projects, while other men were building houses. Kelsey reacted with fire emojis. Another coworker asked if I was serious. I typed that I was half joking, but we all knew that meant more than half true. In the afternoon, between calls, I checked my personal messages. There was one from Eli, asking how my day was. I left it on scene for a while. I did not want to deal with his quiet questions. When I finally answered, I said I was busy networking with people who actually fix things. I thought I was clever. I wanted him to feel the sting. I wanted him to know he was not enough, so maybe he would become more. After work, Kelsey asked if I was still coming to the rooftop bar with the team. It was our usual Monday thing, a way to complain about customers and pretend we had big city lives. I said yes. I did not even ask Eli. In my head, it was my right. I worked too hard to go home to cheap pasta and unfinished cabinets every night. The rooftop was crowded and noisy. Music played just loud enough to make people lean in close. Lights from other buildings glowed all around. I liked that feeling. It made me forget the small apartment and the teacher salary. Kelsey ordered a round of drinks and tagged me in a selfie. In the photo, my hair looked good, my lipstick was perfect, and my eyes were bright. I did not look like a married woman with a boring life. I looked like someone who still had options. Mason showed up later, still in his work clothes, with dust on his boots. Kelsey waved him over, like she had been waiting for him. She teased him about following us from the office. He said one of his jobs ran late near here, and he decided to stop by. I felt that small thrill again. A man who worked with his hands. A man who fixed things instead of making lists. Kelsey pulled out her phone and opened my social media. She scrolled to a picture Eli had posted weeks ago. It was a shot of the crooked shelf he had tried to hang. The angle was off, and you could see the gap in the bracket. Eli had posted it with a caption about trying his best at home improvement. Kelsey zoomed in and showed Mason. She said this was my husband's masterpiece. Mason laughed. It was not a cruel laugh, just a natural reaction. He said he could fix that in 5 minutes. Kelsey added that real men fix things, and I felt the words hit me in a sweet way. I said, in a loud enough voice for the table, that my husband was a good guy, but not a real fixer. I said it like I was tired but brave. I wanted sympathy. I wanted admiration for putting up with less. My phone buzzed. Eli asked if I was coming home soon. He said Ruby missed me and wanted to show me a drawing. I let the message sit there. I showed Kelsey the text and rolled my eyes. I told her he always wanted me home early, like I was his babysitter, not his wife. Kelsey said I should tell him I was working late. Instead, I wrote that I was out with people who know how to build things. I added a smiley face, so if he complained later, I could say it was a joke. As the night went on, Mason sat closer. He told stories about houses he had remodeled. about pipes that burst in the middle of the night, about husbands who stood to the side in panic while he took charge. I laughed and said those stories were my life. I hinted that he should come see our place too. I did not say the word married man in my head. I only thought man who fixes things. When I finally got home, the apartment felt even smaller. Eli's bag was in its usual place by the door. Ruby's shoes lay on the mat. The cabinet door in the kitchen still hung a little crooked. It bothered me more after hearing all of Mason's stories. I looked at the hinge and felt angry again, like the wood and metal were a symbol of my whole marriage. Eli was asleep on the couch, papers spread around him. A red pen rested in his hand. His face looked worn but peaceful. For a second, I felt a tug, like something inside me remembered who he used to be to me. Then I looked at the crooked cabinet, and the cheap lamp, and the thin walls. The feeling died. I went to our bedroom without waking him. I told myself I had every right to expect more from life. I told myself that if he did not want to be compared to men like Mason, he should step up. I did not see that I was already building a case against him in my own mind, one joke at a time. Sunday started with my mother's voice in my ear, before I was even fully awake. She called and asked if we were coming for lunch. She said she bought a big roast and did not want to waste it. I said of course we were coming. I did not ask Eli. In my mind, family events were not optional. If he wanted to be part of this family, he had to show up. Eli was at the small desk in the corner, marking tests. He had his teacher glasses on and a mug of coffee next to him. I told him to get ready because we had to be at my mother's by noon. He said he had a lot of grading to finish and asked if we could go a bit later. I told him my mother already had the time set and I would not argue with her about it. I added that it was not like his work paid extra for Sunday effort anyway. He looked like he wanted to say something, then stopped. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He said he would get dressed. Ruby came running into the room, asking if Grandma would make her favorite dessert. I told her yes. I kissed her forehead and thought that I wanted more for her than this small, tired life. I wanted her to grow up seeing strong men, not men who flinched at every bill. At my mother's house, the smell of garlic and meat filled the air. The table was already crowded. Sabine moved from kitchen to dining room like she was hosting a royal event. Jonas sat at the head of the table, playing some video of a job site on his phone. Carol sat near the window with Ruby, listening to her talk about school. We took our seats. My mother poured wine into my glass and asked Eli if he wanted some. He said just a little, because he still had work to do later. Jonas laughed and said he should relax, because it's not like experiments in the classroom are life or death. The way he said it made everyone smile, except Eli. Jonas started talking about a big job he was doing. Old wiring, water damage, all the usual hero stories. He showed a short clip of himself standing on a ladder, drilling into a wall. Sabine said loudly that this was real work. She glanced at Eli when she said it. I saw his jaw tighten. I decided to tell the cabinet story again. It was an easy crowd pleaser. I told them how the door still hung crooked, how it never closed right no matter how many times Eli adjusted it. I tilted my hand to show the angle. Sabine laughed so hard she had to put down her fork. Jonas said that door needed a man with proper tools. He slapped his hand on the table and said he would come by next weekend to fix the whole kitchen if I made him a decent meal. Eli tried to defend himself. He said he did his best with what we had, and that the landlord should really fix the cabinets anyway. I cut across his words. I said that his best in the house always looked like a school project. Cardboard and tape. Nothing solid. That got another round of laughs. Even Ruby giggled without knowing why. Jonas asked, like he always does, how much Eli actually makes in a month. He said he was just curious. Eli named a number, the same number I had heard before, the one that always sounded small when spoken out loud. Jonas whistled and shook his head. He said he did not get out of bed for less than that in a busy week. Sabine said it was a good thing I had a steady job, because otherwise we would be drowning. She said it with a smile, but the words were sharp. Eli looked down at his plate. His shoulders were tight. Carol spoke up then. She said Eli worked very hard, and that not everything was about money. Her voice was calm, but there was a firmness there. Sabine waved a hand and said, of course, but money mattered when you had a child. She said love and passion could not pay for braces or rent. I felt a strange mix of pride and annoyance. Pride, because everyone could see I had married below my level. Annoyance, because Carol tried to break the mood. I did not want the mood broken. I liked being the one people praised for putting up with less. After lunch, Sabine said we should stop by the hardware store on the way home to look at some tiles for our bathroom. She said if Jonas was going to come over to help, we might as well pick something nice. I liked that idea. New tiles meant proof that things were changing. I liked picturing Mason's reaction if he ever saw them too, like he would see I was not just any woman in a cheap apartment. We walked through the bright, harsh aisles of the hardware store. Jonas went up and down like he lived there. He picked up tools, checked labels, explained things to Ruby like she was his apprentice. Eli walked a little behind us, holding the cart. I could feel his distance. In the tile section, I picked up a heavy box to see the pattern on the side. It was heavier than I thought. I made a small sound of effort and looked around. Eli was at the end of the aisle, reading the price tags. A man in a store vest came over and asked if I needed help. I said yes, and he took the box from my hands and placed it on the cart right in front of Eli. I laughed and said something about how strangers helped more than my own husband when it came to fixing things. The worker smiled politely and walked off. Eli heard me. He said he was just checking prices. I said real men could lift and read at the same time. Jonas laughed so hard he almost dropped his phone. In the car, Eli finally spoke up. He said I had embarrassed him, again, in front of my family and even a stranger. He said he was tired of feeling like a joke. I folded my arms and looked out the window. I said if he did not want to be a joke, he should give people something else to see. I said I was just being honest. I told him that without pressure, he would never grow. He went quiet after that. Instead of snapping back, he pressed his lips together and stared at the road with a strange calm. I did not recognize that look, so I told myself it meant I had finally broken through to him. I thought maybe he would finally man up. That evening, I told him I was going out for coffee with Kelsey. I said we needed girl talk. He asked if I could stay, because Ruby had been clingy all day. I told him he was the one who always talked about bonding, so this was his chance. I said an hour without me would not kill him. He did not argue. He just nodded once and went to help Ruby with her homework. I did not meet Kelsey. I drove to the small motel off the highway where Mason said he could swing by after a job. The room was plain, but I told myself I did not care. I told myself I was not doing anything too bad. I said in my head that this was just a physical thing, a release, a reward. I said I deserved it after all the years of carrying a man who could not fix a cabinet. I will not describe the details. I will only say that I let myself enjoy the feeling of someone who walked in with rough hands and easy confidence. Someone who did not talk about tests or school budgets. Someone who made me feel like I was still young and chosen. I ignored the small, sharp voice that asked what I was risking. When I came home, it was late. The apartment was quiet. The lights in the hallway were low. I expected Eli to be asleep, but he was at the kitchen table. A small lamp cast a circle of light over his notebook and a little black USB drive. On the side of the USB, in his neat writing, was the date. The same date I had just given to someone else. He looked at me for a long moment. His eyes were tired, but not in the usual way. I felt my stomach twist. He said we would talk later, properly. His tone was calm, too calm. Then he stood up, picked up the USB, and walked toward the guest room. The door closed with a soft final click. On the fridge, I noticed something new. In the corner of the calendar, written in small letters on the next Thursday, were the words, meeting, personal. The same words I had seen flash on his phone. I stared at them and told myself it was nothing. I told myself he was just finally making plans to be better. I did not understand that he was making plans without me. The next week, the air in the apartment felt different, even if nothing big had changed on the surface. Eli still got up early, still made coffee, still packed his lunch in the same cheap containers. He still kissed Ruby on the head before school and told her to listen to her teacher. On paper, his routine was the same, but there was a new quiet around him, a tightness, like he was holding something inside and saving it for later. I decided it was his guilt for not being enough. I told myself my words at my mother's house, the jokes about his pay, and the crooked cabinet had finally gotten to him. I thought maybe he was finally thinking hard about how to become the kind of man I needed. One afternoon, I took Ruby to the playground near our building. The sky was grey, and the swing squeaked. I sat on the bench, scrolling my phone while she ran toward the slide. I checked for messages from Mason. There was only one from earlier, where he said he was busy this week, but would see what he could do about meeting. I did not like the distant tone. I told myself he was just tired from work. A woman from the building sat down next to me. She had a toddler in a stroller and tired eyes. We had spoken a few times in the elevator. She asked how things were. I said work was stressful and that my husband was still stuck in his little teacher world. She gave a small smile and said she had seen our building's parking lot late one night, when her baby would not sleep. She said she had noticed a truck with a logo parked below our windows. She asked if we were doing renovations. I felt a jolt in my stomach. I forced myself to look bored. I said we had a guy come check a leak and maybe that was it. She nodded slowly and said it was good to have men who knew tools on call. I laughed and said I wished certain men in my life would learn from that. It was half joke, half test to see if she pushed. She did not. She just turned back to her phone. My heart raced a little anyway. I thought of the motel, of Mason's hands, of the simple white walls. I pushed the memory away. I told myself nobody knew anything, and even if they guessed, they would understand why. Ruby ran over, out of breath, and asked if Mason would come and fix the slide someday. She said she had heard me say he fixed things when Daddy could not. My face burned. I told her not to repeat everything adults said. I said the slide belonged to the city, and Daddy fixed different things. She tilted her head and said, Daddy fixed homework, but Mason fixed real things. Then she ran off again, leaving those words sitting between me and the other woman. That night, Carol called. Her voice was calm, but there was something sharp underneath. She said Ruby had told her that Mason fixes things for Mommy when Daddy cannot. She asked what that meant. I laughed it off and said it was just a silly misunderstanding, that we had a handyman do a quick job, and Ruby had repeated it too many times. I told her she was reading too much into a child's words. She went quiet for a second. Then she said that sometimes children say more truth than adults. She said she hoped I understood what I had in Eli, even if he did not swing a hammer all day. I felt attacked. I told her it was not my fault he did not earn more. I said if she wanted to help, she could stop making me feel guilty and maybe talk to her son about stepping up. When I hung up, I paced the living room. I felt cornered. Instead of thinking about my own choices, I thought about how unfair it was that people expected me to just accept a life of less. I told myself that Carol was just protecting her son and that she did not know how hard it was to be with a man who never fixed anything. Over the next days, Eli spent more time in the small guest room. It had always been half storage, half office. Now it felt like a separate territory. The door stayed mostly closed. Sometimes I heard the soft hum of the shredder from behind it, a short buzz, then silence. Once, when he came out to get water, I saw a neat stack of empty folders on the desk and that same black USB sitting beside his laptop. The screen showed rows of numbers and short lines of text. When I stepped closer, he clicked the window away. I asked what he was doing. He said he was organizing our household information, just in case. His tone was neutral. I snapped back. I said I did not like the way he said, just in case, as if something bad was going to happen. He replied that he wanted to be prepared for all possibilities, especially with a child. I told him he was being dramatic and making me anxious in my own home. That weekend, he asked me to sit down with him at the table. He had a notepad in front of him. He asked if I could write down all the shared account logins and passwords for bills and rent and things like that. He said he wanted everything in one place. I asked why. He said it was for backup in case one of us ever got sick or there was an emergency. I told him I did not like the way he was talking. I said it sounded like he was planning something behind my back. I accused him of getting ready to run away and leave me with the bills. He shook his head and said that was not his plan at all. He said he was trying to be responsible. I rolled my eyes and told him men who made pennies needed more than neat lists to impress me. Later that night, we fought again. I do not even remember how it started. It was about money, about the cabinet, about my mother's comments, about Mason's name slipping out of Ruby's mouth. Eli finally asked directly if there was anything going on between me and Mason. His voice was steady, but his eyes were intense. I felt caught, and I hated that feeling. So I turned it back on him. I asked why he was suddenly so suspicious, as if he was trying to build a case instead of a marriage. I told him he was paranoid, that his students must be making him crazy. I said he was making me feel unsafe with his staring and his constant note-taking. I used that word, unsafe, because I knew it was heavy. He did not yell. He just placed his phone on the table, screen up. A little red dot blinked in the corner of the recording app. I had not noticed he had pressed it before we started. My stomach dropped. He stopped the recording and tapped a button. I watched the file save with a date and time. He said he was tired of being told his reality was not real. He said he needed a record of what was said, so nobody could say later that he imagined it. I snapped that he was crazy, that only controlling people recorded their spouses. He said he was not going to argue about it. He said it calmly, which made me even angrier. He took the phone, walked down the hall, and went into the guest room. The door shut with that same quiet click. I stood in the living room, breathing hard. For a moment, I thought about opening the door and demanding he delete the recording. Then I told myself he would look pathetic, sitting there with his little files, thinking he was powerful. Later, when the apartment was still, I walked past the guest room and glanced in. The laptop screen showed a folder tree with clean labels. I saw two main folders, Archive A and Archive B. On a sticky note next to the keyboard were the words "Bring Forms" scratched in his block handwriting. My eyes caught a small pop-up before it faded, an email confirmation from a law office, something about a consultation on Thursday at 11:15 a.m. I swallowed hard. For a second, my chest tightened. Then I told myself he was bluffing, trying to scare me. I told myself no lawyer would take him seriously with his pay and his soft way of talking. I told myself, even if he did talk to someone, he would come crawling back once he saw how hard it was on one income. I lay in bed that night, scrolling through old photos of me and Mason at work events, small smiles, his arm around a chair, never around me in public. I compared his strong hands in those pictures to Eli's ink-stained fingers. I told myself I was not the problem. I told myself the world rewarded strength, not softness, and that I was only reacting to that truth. I did not see that Eli was done trying to prove anything to me. He had moved on to proving everything to someone else. The school sent the reminder about Ruby's performance a week in advance, a bright little email with stars and cartoon microphones. Ruby was excited for days. She practiced her song in the living room, standing on the coffee table like it was a stage. Eli clapped for her every time, even when she forgot the words. I watched from the doorway and tried not to think about how small our space looked, with its crooked cabinet and cheap curtains. The performance was on a Thursday evening. Eli said he would meet us there after school because he had a staff meeting. I took my time getting ready. I chose a dress that made me look put together, better than the other mums in leggings and old hoodies. I did my hair, my makeup. If my life was going to stay small, at least I would not. Sabine offered to drive with us. In the car, she asked if Eli had snapped out of his sulking phase yet. I said he was still hiding in the guest room with his lists and his files. I told her he had even recorded one of our arguments. She called that creepy and childish. She said a real man would raise his voice instead of pushing buttons on a phone. I agreed, because it suited me to agree. At the school gym, parents filled the bleachers, folding chairs creaked, children in too big costumes ran around, their teachers trying to herd them into lines. Ruby saw us and ran over, green paper leaves pinned to her shirt. She asked if Daddy was there yet. I said he would be. She checked the door every few seconds. Eli came in a few minutes later, still in his school clothes, carrying his worn leather bag. He saw us and gave a small wave, then walked to sit on the other end of our row, next to Carol and Dylan, who had just arrived. Sabine made a small sound and said he was being dramatic. I said maybe he just wanted space to think. I pretended I did not care where he sat, but it bothered me that we did not look like a proper family on display. When Ruby's class went on stage, she scanned the crowd. Her eyes found Eli first. She smiled so wide her cheeks pushed up into her eyes. She waved at him before she started singing. He waved back, hand on his heart. It was ridiculous how moved he looked, tears in his eyes over a children's song. I watched him and felt an odd mix of irritation and jealousy. He always had that soft, easy connection with her. I was the one doing the real work, but he was the one she ran to. After the performance, Ruby rushed straight to Eli, throwing her arms around his waist. She showed him the little paper certificate she got. He knelt down and told her he was proud. I walked over slowly with Sabine. I said Ruby looked beautiful on stage. Ruby nodded and said Daddy had helped her practice her lines. She did not mention me. Some parents gathered near the refreshment table. I ended up next to two moms I knew from the playground. They asked how things were at home. I gave them the usual half-truth smile. I said Eli was still teaching, still earning his teacher pennies, and that I had to call our handyman for every little fix. I made sure they heard the word handyman. I wanted them to understand I had options. One of the moms asked if that was the same guy whose truck she saw many nights. I laughed and said he was practically part of the family now, because someone had to fix things. Eli walked by just then, holding cups of juice for Ruby and another child. I knew he heard. His shoulder stiffened, but he kept walking. He did not say anything in front of the other parents. That bothered me too. If he cared, why wouldn't he fight for me right there? Back at Sabine's house, she insisted on a little celebration for Ruby. Cake, soda, too much noise. Jonas arrived with a bottle of something strong and made a toast to real work and real men. He winked at me when he said it. Eli sat on the arm of a chair, one hand on Ruby's back. His face was closed off. The talk turned, as it always did, to money and plans. Sabine asked if we had thought more about buying a house, or at least moving to a better apartment. She looked at me when she said we, but at Eli when she said money. Eli said calmly that with his salary and current prices, it was hard to see how that would happen soon. He said we were trying to save, but things were tight. Jonas snorted. He said if Eli picked up something real on the side, like wiring or repairs, things would not be so tight. He asked again how much Eli actually brought home in a month. Eli gave the same number as always. Jonas whistled and said he made more last month on a single contract. Sabine shook her head and said I must have the patience of a saint. Carol spoke up, her voice firmer than usual. She said Eli did important work, and that stability mattered too. She said not every man needed to climb a ladder with a drill to be a real father. Sabine rolled her eyes and said nice words did not pay for Ruby's future. She asked why I should carry the extra weight, just because Eli loved his job. I saw my chance. I let my eyes fill with tears, just a little. I told them I felt alone. I said I was tired of being the one who thought about upgrades, about safety, about real plans. I hinted that I had found help in other places. I did not say Mason's name, but it hung in the air anyway. Eli set down his cup. He looked around the room slowly, then at me. He said, in a low voice, that he was doing his best and that I knew exactly what he earned when I married him. He said he had never lied about that. He said what hurt him was not the money, but the way the people closest to him treated him like he was less than a man. I could have stopped there. I could have nodded, or stayed quiet. Instead, I went for the kill. I said if he were a real man, I would not have to call other men to fix my life. The room went silent. Jonas blinked. Sabine stared at me, then at Eli. Carol's face went pale. Ruby, who had been drawing at the coffee table, looked up sharply and asked, "Mommy, is Daddy not a real man?" I laughed, too high and too fast. I said I was joking, that adults said silly things when they were stressed. I told Ruby to go finish her drawing. She did, but she kept glancing at Eli like she was afraid he might disappear. Later, back at our apartment, the quiet was loud. Ruby had fallen asleep in the car. Eli carried her to bed, tucked her in, and kissed her forehead. I watched from the doorway. When he stepped out into the hall, I started again. I said I was tired of living with a man who did not fight for more. I said other women were getting kitchens redone and houses built while I was stuck with markers and science fairs. He stood in the hallway with his hand on the doorframe. His face was calm in a way that scared me more than shouting would have. He said I had made my position very clear. He said he had heard and he believed me. I opened my mouth to throw another insult, to say something about Mason, about real men. He cut me off, still calm. He said he was done arguing. He said, clearly, that from now on, he would handle everything properly. I did not understand what he meant, not really. I told myself it was another weak promise. Then I saw the small overnight bag by the door. It had not been there when we left for the performance. He picked it up, checked his phone, and looked at me one last time. There was no anger in his eyes, just decision. He said he would send me something the next day about Ruby's schedule, so she would not be caught in the middle of our fights. Then he opened the door and walked out into the hallway. The door shut softly behind him, with that same quiet, final sound. I stood there, staring at the empty space where he had been, telling myself he would be back once he calmed down. Telling myself that if he left, it only proved my point about his weakness. I did not look at my laptop on the table, where a new email notification had appeared from an address I did not recognize, subject line only half visible. Draft and next steps. Eli asked me to meet him in an office tower, to talk. I walked in wearing my best blazer, ready to demand counseling and apologies. The lobby directory made my stomach drop. Family law firm. Through glass walls, I saw him sitting with a woman in a suit, a neat binder open. A clerk called my name and handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a divorce petition, already filed. It listed ongoing humiliation and documented infidelity, with dates, screenshots, and transcripts. Attached were temporary orders, shared legal custody, Ruby's school nights with him, a clear schedule for me, rules about overnight guests. Eli stood, thanked his lawyer, and told me everything would now go through counsel. Then he walked out to meet our daughter.